Welcome to the CardinalConnect.com podcast network, your number one source for Louisville Cardinal athletics. Now, here is your host, Nick Coffey.
Hello and welcome to the CardinalConnect.com podcast network. I'm your host, Nick Coffey, joined here by JD Coffey as always. And I say podcast network, but this is our first crack at a webcast. So hopefully you're watching this too and not just listening to it. But first time we've sat down and done one of these in probably almost 2 months, which is a little, I didn't realize how much people actually missed it. And it makes me feel good that people, they need their fix and all that. But there really wasn't a whole lot to talk about. But I've had like hate emails and tweets of people that want to know when the next podcast is. So we've got you, the podcast here, and also the webcast where hopefully you're watching us. We've got a nice little setup here, and this is our first crack at it, and hopefully we can bring this to you each and every week throughout the football, basketball season, and who knows, maybe just year-round if there's enough to talk about, which with U of L athletics, there usually is, but with it being the first time in 2 months, and who knows when you're listening or when you're watching to this, but right now it is Sunday afternoon. It is August, I believe 17th. Is that right?
Yes, 17th.
August 17th. So for us, it's about a little bit after 2 p.m., which means the AP poll was just released. So we'll get right into that, but also throughout the show, we're going to talk a lot about everything going on. You've got the open practices that we had a couple weeks ago, the media day that JD and I were at, also just some basketball stuff to get to. When it comes to August, you're not really talking a lot about the X's and O's of basketball, but just what's going on and recruiting.
Recruiting gets hot and heavy.
And usually you and I are the ones who sit here and kind of say, we want to wait till they get on campus before we get too excited.
Absolutely.
But we'd be foolish to not recognize the type of, like I said, until these guys sign, it really doesn't mean anything at all. I mean, that sounds bad, but that's the truth. But Donovan Mitchell, Raymond Spalding, and Ding Adele, I mean, that's a class right there that could potentially be one of the best that Rick Pitino's ever signed here at Louisville. So we'll get to that, a lot of things. But first things first, we'll get right into the AP poll because it was released just a minute ago. And I'll be honest, Louisville not ranked. By the way, I'm assuming if you're listening and watching, you know that by now. But Louisville is not ranked, and I'm not surprised. That doesn't mean I don't think that they're a team that can be a top 25 team, and that doesn't mean I don't think they can beat a good majority of the teams that are in the top 25.
And they'll face a few of them.
They will. That's absolutely correct. But I'm not surprised, and I said this a couple weeks ago. I joined Greg Brom on the Sunday Sports Buzz, and we broke down the coaches poll, and, I could sit there and say, Louisville deserves to be here, this and that, but I'm not surprised at all because I think there's so much, from the outsider's perspective,
Absolutely.
They're looking at the loss of Teddy Bridgewater, Calvin Pryor, Marcus Smith, 3 first-round draft picks, a new coaching system that's coming in, and also a new conference against different competition. So I'm not all surprised. We're looking at it here, and by the way, I'm sure you're aware of it by now, but Florida State number 1, the defending national champion, Alabama number 2, Oregon number 3, Oklahoma number 4. They also got 1 first-place vote, and Ohio State number 5. Louisville received votes, which really I guess you can expect that, but if you go off the votes they received, they are at number 30. Let me make sure I'm correct counting this correct.
31 is what you had said.
36, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah, 32nd in the AP poll if you go off the amount of votes they've received, and I think it was 36 in the coaches poll. So I'm not surprised. I mean, I get it. But let me ask you this, JD. If you're going to be someone who is pleading for Louisville's case, what do you say? Because I'll be honest with you, when I look at this and see, and this is. And we're going to talk, I want to talk about, we'll get right into this after we talk about the top 25 poll because I think it's worth talking about. But I have a problem seeing Texas ranked ahead of Louisville. And it's not my beef with Charlie Strong, but regardless of Teddy Bridgewater in the NFL, regardless of all these guys gone in a new coaching staff in place, Louisville brings back more talent that's proven. Texas has proven to be mediocre, which makes me believe that they just think Charlie Strong's going to go in and just make the most out of what he's got.
They're in a really similar situation with the new coaching staff and, of course, changeover in the depth chart from seniors graduating and what have you. But you're right. Louisville was further along at the end of last year than Texas, no?
No doubt about it.
And Louisville returns more as far as the depth chart goes, I don't know. Do you know how many guys are returning? I should probably know this. No, how many returning starters for Louisville on both sides of the ball? I really don't know. I'm going to guess it's probably 14, something like that. And if you've got 22 on the field, that's more than half. I doubt Texas has that many.
And what's funny though is that the majority of who's gone are in the NFL, and that goes to show you that you did lose a lot. But you've had I guess this is my plea for, because I do think there are guys who didn't play a whole lot last year that are really talented. For example,
there's guys that did play a lot last year that are really talented. That are going to be better under the system too.
They're going to be better under the system, and they're going to probably. And I want to get into this later as well. But I think there's certain I think it's far fewer than there are multiple, but there are some guys that may fit better with this style than they did under Charlie Strong. Now, I don't think there's a whole lot, but one guy in particular is Gerard Holloman, a guy who nobody really knows about since he got here. He was a very highly regarded prospect, went to prep school, then came here, and he's played behind Hakeem Smith and Calvin Pryor, which didn't give him a lot of opportunity for time. He played, but it's hard for him to get significant action and make an impact when he's playing behind those two guys. So I think there are guys that are coming back that people kind of sell a little bit short. But at the same point in time, I just think the national perspective of Louisville is that they're going to really struggle with the ACC. And
I just don't see it. I mean, it's
I'm
going
to be tougher.
You said with the ACC. Okay, if we're getting into that conversation, they are going to struggle because they haven't played competition like this since the Big East was in its heyday. And you were playing Pitt.
And they only got a couple of years of that.
Right. So if you're putting ACC into the mix, it's going to be difficult. But Louisville's loaded in a lot of areas.
They are, and I think that there are some question marks. Now, look, I'm optimistic. I'm as optimistic as anybody about this season for U of L. I think they've got a lot of talented pieces back, especially offensively. Defensively, there's a lot of new things going on, but I do think they have the pieces to where they could have a really good team. But with that said, there are some guys back that have been really good that are returning. I think some people nationally are selling that, underselling that. But with Bobby, I think that we were at Media Day a couple weeks ago, actually just last week, and he was asked about that question from someone, are you paying attention to being a little bit, I don't know what I'm paraphrasing here because I don't remember the exact question, but he said, you guys return a lot of talent from a team that went 12-1, and you're not ranked in the polls, most likely not going to be ranked in the AP poll. Sure enough, they're not, and that was the one question that I think kind of pissed him off a little bit.
I think it pissed him off, but I think you got what you would have thought you would have gotten out of him,
he basically just said that, we're not paying any attention to that, and I believe it in a way. I do think there's that shade that you can throw up of when everybody says they're not listening or paying attention to anything. I don't believe a little bit of it, but I think Bobby likes where they're at because I think he knows they can go in and look. The one thing we know about Bobby Petrino is that he's perfectionist at preparation, and so that's one reason why I'm extremely confident about where they're going to be in the season opener. Mm-hmm. But with that said, going down the road, the one big difference between this year and last year, in my opinion, is they're going to be going up against good teams week in and week out for the most part. Now, last year they had a couple of good games here and there, but they're not going to be playing Memphis and then going to play Central Florida and then going to play Houston and Temple. They're going to be playing significantly better teams each week in and week out. I think that's the biggest difference, not just for this year, but the program as a whole has never really had a season where they're going to be playing really good competition for the most part throughout the year. 9 of the 12 games are against teams that are respectful. Last year, they played, I think it was, and look, last year was great. It was fun. Russell Athletic Bowl champions.
Fun-ish.
I get it.
Fun-ish.
Fun-ish. But they played, there was one stretch where they played, I think it was Temple, FIU, and there was another team that you mix in there. Well, they played 3 of the worst 6 teams in football within like a 6-week period, and you're not going to have that this year. So that's my big thing is there's going to be differences, but I'm optimistic as anybody. We're going to continue to talk about Louisville football throughout the show here. But real quick, just to get back to the AP poll, I'm going to read it off to you. As I mentioned, the top 5: Florida State at number 1, Alabama number 2, Oregon number 3, Oklahoma number 4, and the Ohio State Buckeyes at number 5. And just to kind of tell you where, obviously the ACC team is represented at number 1 is Florida State. They are the defending national champions. They got 57 first-place votes, and there's only 3 teams within the ACC that are ranked in the top 25 in the AP poll. Of course, Florida State number 1. You've got Clemson that comes in at number 16, and then North Carolina, the Tar Heels, coming in at number 23. A little surprising to me, and that all, as much as we talk about the big conference shift when you go from the American to the ACC. I think it's significant, but this conference not really getting a lot of love in the polls.
No.
You got Clemson at number 16, and then Carolina barely cracking it at the end. Of course, it is worth mentioning that Duke comes in right outside the top 25 along with Louisville. So if you're going on the votes from the AP poll, the only teams ahead of Louisville are Duke, who just received a few more votes than Louisville outside the top 25. North Carolina coming in at number 23, and then Clemson at 16, and then of course Florida State at number 1. But opportunities for wins. But I think this league's a little better than people are giving it credit for.
I don't know. I tend to think Clemson might be still a little bit overrated coming into the season. They lost a couple key pieces with quarterback and their top wide receiver. That was, I don't know margins and percentages, but that was a very high percentage of what their offensive showcase was last year. So there's still some question marks out there. You can also throw in not tied to the ACC now, but Notre Dame's in the top 25 as well, and Louisville will face them. So they'll have some opportunities to make some noise in the top 25.
That's the one thing I hate about Notre Dame in this ACC agreement, because we can't claim that they're in the conference. We can't claim that, you can claim it on strength of schedule when it's all said and done. You only play them, I think, one every 3 years.
Yeah, that's something like that.
But it's a little tricky. But in the end, Louisville's going to have a much tougher schedule than they've had in maybe. I'm trying to think of the last time they had a schedule anywhere close to this.
You might not be able to go back that far.
You go back to the West Virginia days and
West Virginia, Pittsburgh, Rutgers
being in the top 5 and at that point in time, and USF had a crazy year where they were there. So it's a big difference, but not surprised that they're out of the top 25 when it comes to Louisville, and I think it's a good position. They've got a lot of opportunity to climb because I think they're going to have their tough stretch. Of course, Miami, people talk about that being the first, I shouldn't say first, that being the most important game of the year, because I don't know if I'm going to go that far, but I will say that it's going to set the tone for the season without question, because if you lose that game, you lose a little bit of wind in your sail, but if you win it, then the whole momentum keeps going. The team's got confidence. I think it's really important, but we'll get to that a little bit later. Something I mentioned when we opened is what we were going to talk about, and if literally my mind, if I wouldn't have just thought of this, I would have never brought it up. But we talked about Texas being ahead of Louisville in both polls. And they were ranked in the coaches poll, not ranked in the AP, but they received more votes. And in my mind, Charlie Strong makes an impact. And now I'll say this. Mac Brown with the top 5 recruiting classes that he has, and then Charlie Strong with the top 5 recruiting classes now that he inherits, I would expect better results from Charlie Strong because I think he's a better coach than Mac Brown. I believe that. And I'll say this, and JD, you might feel differently, and that's fine. Most fans feel differently than me. But I have tried. I can't do it. I can't watch Charlie Strong on ESPN. I can't watch him do this and that and root against him. I can't do it. I'm not saying I'm going to be tuned into the Longhorn Network with a burnt turd orange shirt on like I'm cheering for Texas, but I can't root against him. I'm not saying I do want to see him do well, but I guess what I'm trying to say is with Texas, and look, this is the only reason I'm mentioning this now because we're not going to talk about Texas football during the season. We're talking about U of L nonstop. But I felt as going into the year, as we're now 3 weeks away from the season, it's worth mentioning it. But I think he's going to do well. Is he going to do well enough for Texas standards? I don't know. But I want to see him do well. And I have, the way, I guess, when you look at the suspensions that he's laying down, the guys he's kicked off the team, for Texas, they're thinking what the hell's this guy doing? But in my mind, I'm thinking it's going to all pay off for them, and they're going to be glad they hired that guy in the end. The only concern I have is that if he goes 7-5, 8-4 in the first 2 seasons, which is realistic, right? When you take over a program, it's realistic.
Absolutely.
Is that going to be good enough for them?
No.
And your answer there is probably where a lot of people lie, and they just think that they expect this guy to come in and win. And to be fair, given that he wasn't the hire they wanted Nick Saban, but he wasn't the hire they wanted, so I think the leash is a little bit shorter.
To me, it's kind of a bittersweet kind of situation because the way he left, we all know, and I hate maybe using those words because he didn't leave in a terrible way, just not an ideal way. Okay, so I kind of got a little bit of a bad taste in my mouth with the way he exited. But if I'm just being 1,000% honest with anybody that's listening or watching and telling you,
this is what we do here.
Is it was extremely boring football over the last few years. I mean, literally, an away game that I didn't go to against FIU at 12 o'clock on a Saturday, rainy afternoon, if I'm sitting on my couch, I may struggle to stay awake.
You couldn't have said it better, because it's really hard for fans to complain. And I'm one of those guys who, look, this team is, they're last year they lose one game to Central Florida, a team that ended up being pretty good. They beat Baylor in the I think it was not the Sugar Bowl, but I think it was Fiesta Bowl. So they lost to a team that was pretty good. But in my mind, I'm thinking this team should be doing better. Now look, when they finished the season, I think they were 10-1. They just beaten Memphis. They were going to finish the season against Cincinnati. I'm thinking, look, they're 10-1, so I'm not going to go on the radio at the time and sound like a pompous jerk and say this team is underperforming. But you don't beat a team like Memphis when you have the weapons you have by a touchdown. It just,
and you finish out Central Florida.
Sure,
with the lead you had, you finished that game
so
out.
in my mind, I'm sitting here thinking they should be better, but yet it's just fans wanted to see 50 points, and now they've got that with Bobby Petrino. So in a way, the exit it could all end up being
come together beautifully.
It could all come together and be a happy thing for everybody. Charlie, if he has the success in Texas, and if Bobby's able to be Bobby, which we hope he, in 41-9 in his first tenure, I think a lot of fans are excited about what they're going to get. But with that said, I think what you said is perfectly that Charlie was doing great things, but it wasn't the brand of football that.
No, it's not what we were used to.
But I'll say this before we got to get to. We're going to take a quick break here in just a minute. Before we do that, I'll lead off to one thing you said is, it wasn't great to watch, and I get that. But I'll say this: had Charlie been doing that against ACC teams, would have been a different story.
Well, sure,
because he would have had to try to score, because they were going to score too. It's just a different breed, different animal there. But we're going to take a quick break, and we're going to come back, and this is part of this. The reason we're having this break is it's part of the webcast here. So hopefully you stick with us. Like I said, the break's going to be probably maybe 5 seconds at most. So make sure you guys stay tuned here. Don't turn your phone off. Don't turn your computer off. Keep us locked here on the CardinalConnect.com podcast network. Welcome back to the CardinalConnect.com podcast and webcast here, as Nick Coffey and JD Coffey are with you. A brief break, and hopefully it wasn't too bad. Like I'm recording, so I don't know how long it was. I'm assuming it was only like 5 seconds at most. But anyways, we'll get back to talking football. We talked a little bit about the AP poll and just kind of Louisville football in a whole as they go into the 2014 season. But one thing I want to get to now is JD and I were at Media Day last weekend, and really just I didn't know what to expect. I was going into it just kind of thinking, really the only media days since I've been covering the team, it's been Charlie Strong. So those media days have been fine. They've been great. You have each coach. Actually, I shouldn't say each coach, but you had Coach Strong, Watson, and Bedford, who stole the show every time he came to the podium at Media Day. But this time it was a little different, but I thought we got more out of it.
I liked it. Bobby Petrino seemed it. I just made that word up. He seemed very candid and very excited. Of course, we're all excited right now. Yeah, he was pretty much all questions that were given to him. He was straightforward with his answers. With one or two, he kind of.
Would you say this though? I feel like he's more comfortable here than he is anywhere.
Absolutely, and then he was before.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, he's in a more comfortable spot in his life, his career. It seems just as a whole, he's just. And
another thing that's interesting to me is that most coaches don't really like the media.
No,
they kind of just put up with it. It's just a nagging thing on their shoulder they have to deal with. But I'll say this: Bobby seems to kind of like us. Not us just personally, but he doesn't mind Louisville media. He kind of gives you what you need to give. The media access for the practices, for the media day, for everything has been unbelievable. Now, we know Charlie Strong was a lot different than the way he did things, but Bobby seems to open it up and be pretty much just, whatever you guys need, I'll give you the answer. He's not withholding anything, that's for sure. And with the previous regime, you couldn't say the same. But anyways, one thing I put up on the post last week, so it's a little dated if you're someone who follows the site religiously, but it's worth talking about. But the 8 takeaways that I had from the media day. The one thing is not surprising. The first thing I had, I should say not the one thing, but the first thing I had was the execution. It's still just, it's a business almost. It's almost like,
sure,
you're not.
He takes a professional approach to it.
It's a professional approach, and I've got a pretty good relationship with Greg Brom, who was on the staff a couple, shouldn't say a couple years ago, but the last time that Petrino was, running the program, and he told me as soon as Bobby was hired that, because I asked him, because my main concern was something that we've heard is one of the biggest upsides of the fall camp, that is. I was concerned as how players are going to adjust from playing for Bobby Petrino and Charlie Strong. How are they going to come together? How are they going to meet in the middle? Because there's certain guys who, in my mind, I was thinking it's going to be tough for them to go from under Strong's staff and those guys, the way they do things, to the way that Bobby and his staff do things, because it's a 180. It's a complete difference. And that's the one thing that he raved about, is that it's been a great transition. The leadership from the veterans, the returning guys, they've taken it on very well, and that's what surprised me.
Well, the offensive guys are going to be okay with the change.
Let's
be honest, call it what it is.
Ecstatic.
Yeah. These guys are going to put up Tecmo Bowl numbers compared to what they did under Coach Strong. And not that he didn't, he and Watson, they did some very good things, but it was just slightly vanilla.
Yeah, no, that's putting it nicely.
I'm trying to be nice.
Putting it nicely. And also another thing that I took away was that I feel like now newcomers are given more of an opportunity. Maybe it's because they're bringing in guys that they brought in, meaning not leftovers from the Strong regime, but they're bringing in guys that are given a shot right away to make an impact. And that's somewhat surprised me that those guys are now being thrown in right in with the first string. Now, I'll say this: a lot of those guys are junior college guys, right, which means they've got some experience under their belt and whatnot, and that's fine. But you look at Reggie Bonifant, a guy who I never expected him to even be sniffing first string reps this year, and now he's legitimately going to be the backup quarterback, and that surprised me a little bit. But also you look at a guy that they, there's one guy in my opinion they brought in specifically that was not a strong recruit, but the staff, the new regime here at Louisville brought in and said, look, we need this guy. He's worth it. It's Javonte Bagley. He's a wide receiver who caught a couple touchdowns yesterday I say yesterday, but it was whenever day you're listening to this, it was on this past Saturday at the Fan Day. And, he's a guy that they love. And a lot of the guys who are making an impact early are junior college guys, which you'd expect, because they also got a couple of really good junior college guys. But
and they kind of had to.
They needed it. They did need it. But you look at a guy like Reggie Bonifant coming in, who's solidified himself as the for sure backup quarterback. I don't think he's going to beat out Will Gardner, but he's the backup quarterback. And you look at a guy like Javonte Bagley, who may even end up redshirting him when you look at the depth of the wide receivers. But I'm surprised that Petrino talked about as many newcomers as he did at the press conference on media day.
Well,
it's rare,
right? And he talked about some guys that I guess in the previous regime you didn't really hear a lot about, like Keith Tobridge at tight end. Tight end, you're going to talk about Gerald Christian, but I believe at media day he spent more time talking about Tobridge than he did Gerald Christian. It was minimal.
I think everybody just knows what to expect out of Christian.
I guess, well, let's hope so anyway.
Yeah, that's funny you mentioned that, because that was the next thing I wanted to get to, was the tight end position, where this is not a knock towards anybody who's played tight end for Louisville in the last decade, but since Bobby left, there hasn't been a lot of sizzle at that position that you get excited about. The one guy that you did get excited about was the guy who played last year, who had an impact. Gerald Christian was an impact player on last year's team, but I know I'm not the only one who felt he was underutilized.
Yeah, and that's what it is. It's underutilized. I had that word in my head. I was ready for you to break, and I was going to bring it up, because that's really what it is. There's been some good guys, they just weren't utilized well. Who was and I should know, was 2 years ago.
The last tight 2 years ago, you had the kid from the transferred in JUCO guy that can't transfer in, and I don't know his name, and I'm bad. Now there was Nord, who was a guy who played tight end, but there really wasn't a lot of uber talent that position. In my opinion, this is just my opinion, the last tight end other than Gerald Christian that gave you a little bit of excitement, that was a big time playmaker, was Cam Graham. Remember him? The
guy
from
he was a JUCO, or was he
was
just
a JUCO guy that played 1 year for the Crackthorpe regime, and then he played his final season under Strong in Strong's first season. So the tight end position is going to be something that I think that you're going to see Gerald Christian put up some numbers, Tobridge as well, and they really love the guys they've got, Mickey Crum, and then there's another kid from Ohio that they've got at the tight end position this year as a freshman that they're really excited about. And then you look at going down the road recruiting, I think if there's one coach that could really sell that tight end position, it's Bobby Petrino.
Bobby Petrino, through his previous regime at Louisville, Gary Barnage, of course, he put in the league, and I believe he's still playing. But his backup, Scott Kuhn, played in the NFL for the Packers for at least several years, I believe.
Yeah.
So I mean, if you're going to put the backup in the league the same year that you put the starter in the league, you kind of know what you're doing with the tight end position. But
am I wrong in thinking that? I mean, Gerald Christian's probably better than...
Gerald Christian could be the best tight end Louisville's ever had.
I agree.
Go back to the Ivan Green days, Rodney
got.
Gent. I mean, Louisville's had some pretty... Richard Owens, Ronnie Gent, Ivan Green. Louisville's had some very good tight ends. But this guy...
Pretty special.
Yeah, we're going to be in for a nice treat.
So, and the wide receivers, we could sit here and do an entire show talking about the wide receivers and the talent they have. But I'll say this, and you're the only one that has the form here that could tell me I'm wrong. But I honestly feel, and look, this is maybe I'm just buying into the Bobby juice. I'm too excited. I'm just foaming at the mouth at the opportunities this offense has. But I honestly believe that Bobby has, other than the quarterback, which is a huge part of it. Now, like Will Gardner, no question, I have faith in Will Gardner, but the big thing is we've not seen it. We've not seen Will Gardner be a starting quarterback. We've not seen him lead touchdown drives. It just hasn't happened yet. Doesn't mean he's not capable. It's just the fact that he's not played a lot.
He didn't play last year.
He could have gotten more opportunities last year, in my opinion, at the coaching staff.
I think anyone's opinion.
I think a lot of people felt that Teddy could have kind of taken the seat and you could have let Will get a little bit of action. But regardless, I'm confident in Will, but he's just not done it yet. But outside of that position offensively, the quarterback, which, look, I get it's the most important position on the field, I don't think Bobby had this many weapons at any point.
Never.
With wide receiver and the running back, and look, I know how great Michael Bush was. I know how great Eric Shelton was. I know Colby Smith, the running back coach now, I know how great he was. And look, Mario Urrutia, Harry Douglas, all those Tiger Jones, all those guys, Montrell Jones. I truly believe, and look, I could be wrong. If this team goes 7-5 and they underachieve, I'll be looking like a fool. But I legitimately think when you look at skill position players, wide receivers and running backs, I think Bobby has more weapons than he's ever had at Louisville. Now, look, I preface it. I know that the quarterback position is huge there, but there's a lot of talent.
The quarterback position is very important in all aspects, but with stacked guys that he has in his backfield and wide out and tight end, honestly, all you need is a game manager. I mean, I think Will is much more than that. I really do, and I think he's going to end up going down as a guy who, put in some work, but really could have been. I think he'll do fine. But with the guys that he has, all you have to do is keep from turning the ball over, and just manage the game. Really, you're going to have guys open, so find them.
And if you're a quarterback, you would love to play in Petrino's system. And one thing I wanted to ask you about, and we've only got about 6 or 7 minutes left in this segment, and we're going to come back for just another brief segment to finish the show. But, I'll say this. The one surprise, there was a couple for me, but the one surprise for me going into the fall camp was that Will Gardner wasn't solidified as this is our guy, this is the starting quarterback. We're now in mid-August, and Bobby Petrino has not named a starting quarterback yet. That doesn't mean you should be concerned. And it could be that he's opening up for competition. He's trying, he made Will Gardner earn it in the spring. Let's make him earn it in the fall. I get that. But also, the first couple practices we saw, Will Gardner, he didn't look as sharp as he did in the spring. Now, that could, they're actually throwing the one defense at him, and guys are healthy now that weren't healthy on defense in the spring.
Quite a bit of them.
So that makes a big difference. But I was surprised at that he almost opened up a competition whenever, not just what he told us, but when you see the quotes from ESPN, USA Today, Fox Sports, Bobby was telling everybody he's got his quarterback. He's walking into a situation where not only does he have talented weapons, he's got a quarterback that can make it all happen. And that surprised me a little bit that he kind of wasn't really ready. But to say Will Gardner is our starting quarterback. But with that said, I do understand the fact that he's going to make him earn it in the fall. And, Will, not that Will had a big head by any means, but he's named a team captain. But I understand it, but I will say that I was a little bit surprised that Bobby wasn't ready to just, okay, this is our guy.
I think you put some of that back on Reggie Bonifant. Really, I think because he looked so good that I think all along Will was going to be the guy. And, of course, when he named him a captain last week, that pretty much solidified things. But let's be honest, Reggie Bonifant came out from day one since he arrived and, started kind of showing his skill set. I mean, we were out at open practices. Yeah. Sometimes Reggie looked more, sharper, more sharp. He very calm.
Doesn't look like a freshman, that's for sure.
No, not at all. So I'm good with competition, even if it's just a head game.
I like it, and one thing that I'll say about Reggie Bonifant is, maybe he's got just the Trinity glare, if you will, where he knows how the Petrino practices are run. He knows what to expect. It's professional, put together package. There's no distractions. There's no. It is preparation to the core, and I think there's something about that really impressed Bobby. And let's be honest, Bobby likes Petrino, or Bobby likes Trinity guys.
He's had some good results.
Yeah, it's just part of it, and I do think that Reggie solidified himself as the backup without question. But I'll also say that Will, he's made some big strides. I think just in the last 4 or 5 days, Will Gardner, that is. But he did start off the fall camp a little shaky, a little bit inconsistent. Bobby, his first quote from the first open practice was that he would like to see Will be a little bit sharper and like to see him look like he did in the spring. And we were at the spring game. He looked like a guy who was going to lead Louisville to 400, 500 passing yards a game, and that may be the case, but it's just a little bit to be determined at this point. I'll say this as we transition here to the defensive side of the ball. I'm confident in Lorenzo Malden. You and I were sitting there at the open practice. I think the last open practice they had before media day, and I told you straight up, I don't know what to expect. You don't know it until you see it. There are so many guys that made an impact on this defense last year that aren't here anymore, and a lot of them are in the NFL. And that doesn't mean there's not talented players behind them. But when I get out there and I see all new faces, it kind of, I wouldn't say concerned me, but I'm not quite as confident because I haven't seen it yet. Same thing with Will Gardner. Doesn't mean I'm not confident in his abilities, but there's one thing when you've seen it happen on the field, and there's another, whenever you expect it, but you don't truly know.
I kind of go a different direction. I'm actually getting more confident, even discussing the secondary, which we haven't touched on that, and we don't really probably need to right now, but I'm getting more and more confident as it goes, because you've got guys like Keith Kelsey, who played a backup role last year, but the dude could probably start in the middle of the pack, in middle linebacker, one of the two spots for Louisville, but he's going up against Keith Brown and James Burgess Jr., two dudes who have been impact players for that linebacking group under the Charlie Strong. So I'm actually going the other direction. I think I'm getting more and more confident with P.O. I'm just going to leave it there. With P.O. and with James Sample, these guys, I feel good about it. I really do. I
wouldn't say I don't feel good about it. My big thing is that,
and I feel good about Todd Grantham. Let me put that
the one thing I love to hear Todd Grantham say is that he's going to be flexible. He's not just strictly going to, enforce he's not going to try to put a puzzle together without the pieces that fit. He's going to be flexible. And that's what you have to do when you take over a defense that you didn't necessarily recruit. And the one thing that I will say that I do like is that there's certain guys, Gerard Holloman, as I mentioned earlier on, is a guy who is really thriving under this type of system. I think James Burgess fits this system really well. Lorenzo Malden as a pass rusher, along with JUCO transfer Trevon Young, I think that's going to give a lot of people some problems. They did give up some big plays yesterday in the open scrimmage, but the question is, was that the fact that they were, not performing well, or they're going up against one of the more prolific offenses in the country? I like to think the latter.
Yeah, I think so too. These guys, okay, if they can handle this offense, which I think we're going to see both sides of it, where the offense is owned and defense owns others. Let's just say it's good preparation for what's to come if they can get up against these guys and do well.
I agree. We're out of time for our second segment here. We're going to come back for one final segment. It's going to be a little briefer than the previous two, but we'll be back. Make sure you guys, like I said, keep it locked. I don't know where you would go. It's only going to be,
go get a beer.
If you're watching on your video, you're listening, whatever. Hopefully you'll literally just set your phone down for a second, and we'll be right back. So make sure you guys keep it locked for one more segment here of the CardinalConnect.com podcast network. Welcome back to our final segment here of the CardinalConnect.com podcast, webcast, I guess now, network. But
works.
A lot of football talk in the first segment, which, it is August, so football is going to be the majority of what you're going to hear from us. But also, I'd be foolish to not mention basketball recruiting, which we're going to here in just a second. But before we get to that, I have to mention something that has been, well, you all have mentioned it to me for probably the last, I'd say 6 to 8 months, that you wanted an updated Cardinal Connect app. And I don't know if you said, can I be honest? They didn't say they wanted an updated app. They said, the one you have now sucks. The app sucks. Get rid of it. You suck. You're a loser. I heard a lot of negative comments about it. And look, I get it. So what I did is I teamed, grouped, whatever you want. I don't know if that's a word, but I got together with someone who could make it better, and I hope that that's exactly what happened, because there is a new update to the CardinalConnect.com app for your iPhone. If you've got an iPhone, an iPad, just update the one you had previously, and hopefully your life will be much better. But if you're an Android user, this is important. If you have an Android, Google Play Store, I guess I have an iPhone, so Google Play Store is what you use for apps for any Android type device that's not iPhone, or Apple, I should say. Instead of updating, what you need to do is just go download a new one. If you go to the website, you can see the instructions, but if you just search Cardinal Connect in the Google Play Store, it is, I think, the third or fourth one that comes up, and it'll be that. So the one you have, if you're an Android user and you haven't downloaded the app within the last, I guess, week or so, download the different one you see in the App Store, because it is better when it's the new improved, and hopefully it makes everything better. And I'll tell you this.
Oh, it does.
JD is an Android user, so he tells me...
Not by choice.
He tells me all the time how much better this one is. And look, I'll be honest with you. I didn't realize how important the app was. The app was like the best thing and the worst thing that happened to the website, because the app kind of set me apart from people that let you have the news, ASAP on your phone. You don't need to be scrolling for links. It's just, you're going to get a notification if news breaks. If this is a new post, that's what's going to happen. But a lot of people fail to realize now that this is a website. They just think it's an app that's out there, and it's not. It's a website that powers the app. And we do a lot of, we're not journalists by any means, but we do everything to get you the coverage we can, whether it be a practice, video, all the articles we give you daily. We give you at least 5 or 6 articles daily on the site, thecardinalconnect.com, and they all come to your app. But, the app, I will say this. I was humbled to realize how many people were turned off by the previous design that we had. But hopefully it's good now.
It is.
Hopefully life is better for you.
I went from not using it. I mean, we're keeping it honest.
This is
today,
my blood here.
We're keeping it honest.
I
would literally go to my browser rather than go to my app, because it just didn't work real well for Android.
Wasn't user friendly.
It wasn't. Now, night and day, and there's still going to be some changes made that it's going to make it even better, but it's going to be tough to top, because it's already way further along than the previous.
Especially not only user friendly for just reading the articles and stuff we post daily, but also the webcast and the podcast. We're going to have specific pages on that app for you where you can just pull it up and watch it anytime, and hopefully you do that. But yeah, that's I couldn't do this first webcast and not mention the updated app, because it is a big deal to me, because I put a lot of time into making it as user-friendly to you guys as I can. But I will say this, if you're going to give feedback, just tell me, hey, I would like you to maybe make this change. Don't email me and tell me you hate me and that the app is ruining your life, because it's a little much.
Right. Well, it's Rick Pitino's microwave society.
Exactly,
right?
Exactly. That's one thing I didn't realize, that there's so many times I want to just say, look, if the app is that bad, just delete it and I'll let you know when there's a new one. Right. But I don't want to piss anybody off. But you would think that this people they're expected to have this. I don't know. I should just stop talking, because there's so many people that send me hate mail because the app wasn't working right, or they this and that. And I get it. If it sucked, then I'm sorry. But hopefully it's all good now. But anyways, we spent the entirety of the show so far talking about football, which, it's August. That's what we're going to do. But
unless you're Kentucky.
That's true. I'm glad you mentioned that, because if there's one thing that leads you to know that it's football season, it's Kentucky fans talking about basketball. Right. And that's what they're doing. And look, I get it. They're in the Bahamas. And look, I'll be the first to say they're going to be really good this year. I get it. But I feel like John Calipari and Mark Stoops met up and just said, look, Let's send the basketball team on a trip to play some games in August. That way we're talking basketball. Take the focus away from my sorry team that goes 2-10 every year and hasn't won an SEC game. JD, you got a daughter that's a few years old. Has she been alive to see Kentucky win an SEC game? I'm not quite
sure she has. She'll be 4 here in a couple weeks, and
it's that bad.
Sure, right?
It's that bad. But anyways, basketball. We're not going to talk about breaking down the X's and O's of basketball because it's August. It's football season. But I'd be foolish to not acknowledge the recruiting efforts that's being put in by the basketball staff. And look, I get it. It doesn't matter until these guys arrive on campus, and really, verbal commitment means nothing. We saw that previous years when you look at guys like Rodney Purvis, Jaquan Lyle, a lot of guys who just committed and just decided to go elsewhere. I get that. It's worth mentioning, but this trio that they've got right now. They're still working. I know you all know that. They're still working, but the trio of Ding Adele, Raymond Spalding, along with Mitchell. Why is his first name escaping me? Donovan Mitchell. I've been writing posts about almost every day. It seems like his name escaped me there. But yeah, Donovan Mitchell. That's a class they could end with right now and be fine. Yeah. But they're continued, I think, to add at least one more. Antonio Blakeney's also in the mix there. But I've got to say, you could chalk it up as it being the hiring of Kenny Johnson as the reason they're going after and getting all these top prospects, and he's had a big part of it. Raymond, surprisingly, the guy who's the lowest ranked of the 3 commitments, which is Raymond Spalding, the local guy, which by me saying he's the lowest ranked doesn't mean I'm not optimistic about his upside. He's the one guy that established the relationship with Kenny Johnson. You look at Ding Adele, that was a lot to do with Mike Bellato and Rick Pitino personally. You look at Donovan Mitchell, I think the entire staff collectively put in for that. And, I'm a basketball junkie. I follow the recruiting circuit pretty closely. I don't talk to these guys on the daily via text because I've got better things to do than talk to high school kids, and I'm not a recruiting guy. But this is a really good class that I'm extremely excited about. And the one guy that obviously the buzz is circulating about is Donovan Mitchell. And I mean, it's a cool story, is it not?
It is. He brings an intrigue that for the non-recruiting guys, the people that just follow the program, it's kind of nice to kind of follow or to see, kind of how it's played out for him.
And you look at the whole, he was a guy who didn't play AAU last year in the summer circuit because he had a broken wrist, but was always regarded as a borderline top 100 prospect that had offers from some respective schools, but not the elite programs. They were showing interest but didn't offer. And then he goes into the spring circuit, has a good showing. And then Rick Pitino had his press conference in July. We were there at the beginning of July, the first day of the open contact period, told us that I'm paraphrasing here, but he said, we know who we're going after in 2015. We've got those guys locked in. We're going to be going after those guys and just kind of evaluating the 2016 prospects along the way. And sure enough, that night, he's in Philadelphia at the Breakout Classic. He and Kenny Johnson see Donovan Mitchell. And, the guy tears it up and continue to do that throughout the entire month. And they offer him a scholarship.
They put on the full court press on that.
And within a month, they get a commitment from him. That's good work. Yeah. And, there's a reason this guy was one of the most talked about prospects on the circuit in July. And also, this guy went from being borderline top 100 ranked. He's now ranked number 19th in the country by Scout.com and is a 5-star prospect. And just to put this out there, I would love to see Louisville land Antonio Blakeney. He's an elite level scorer, really good shooting. I mean, he's the total package. But I think fans are really caught up in getting him. But they need to realize right now that with Ding Adele and Donovan Mitchell, you've got 2 guys ranked ahead of Antonio Blakeney, which, rankings don't always mean anything. I get it. I understand. Louisville fans are the first to know that rankings aren't the total indicator as of how good these recruits are. But Louisville's got a really good class right now, and I'm excited about it. And, you want to see them sign. But when you see guys like Donovan Mitchell and Raymond Spalding on Twitter trying to kind of help recruit guys like Perry Dozier, it makes you think that they're all in and they want to see they want to see this team bring home another national title. Let's
hope so. You've said it before. We're guys that we want to wait till they get on the court, but it's hard not to be excited right now. With 3 guys that are all 5 stars in one major recruiting service or another, I mean, when was the last time we've had that?
It's been a long time.
Even if you go back to Louisville's last top class or really good class, it didn't really pan out very well. So hopefully this one, do a little better.
It absolutely could. And another thing we've got to mention while we're on basketball, it's worth noting the Chris Jones injury. He has what is. What I was told was that he had a fractured shin and would be out about 6 weeks. The official release from U of L noted that he has a left leg injury, which will keep him out from 6 weeks. Who knows what exactly it goes in there. But regardless, it sounds like he'll be back right before the season starts. Not an injury you want to see at that time because you'd like to see him full strength when he comes back to open up the practice. But nonetheless, it's good news that he will be back when the season starts. But we're going to talk basketball, or I'm sorry, we're going to talk football until we can anymore throughout the next couple weeks. But basketball, I think you got a lot of optimism with this team coming up this season. You look at the debut season in the ACC is going to be really tough considered to last year, but Montrezl Harrell, Terry Rozier,
the pieces are there.
They're there, and I think you have 2 guys who could be the big. I mean, we're going to end the show here in just a minute, and we'll kind of tease you with this, but I believe that Terry Rozier and Montrezl Harrell, they're going to have a lot of players around them that are going to be impact players as well. And who knows what the season's going to entail. There's going to be some good teams in the country in the landscape there. But I don't know if we're going to have a better duo than Montrezl Harrell and Terry Rozier than we've had in a long time. I mean, it's pretty when you look at what they've done this summer.
They'll be formidable. It's scary. I mean, there are a couple guys that you may not see following next year.
Oh, absolutely.
You probably
won't. Those 2 guys particularly, I totally think so.
You probably won't. And they are going to have some good pieces around them. So if they're going to stand out, which they likely are going to stand out with still the good grouping around them, it says a lot.
Absolutely. And that does it for us here on the first. Actually, it's the mini podcast we've had, but the inaugural webcast. Big thanks to those tuning in. Big thanks to Chris Humphrey here, who's our technical producer on hand, making this thing happen. JD, thank you as always for coming by. And hopefully we'll be back next week. Thank you for tuning in once again. This is the CardinalConnect.com podcast network.